Hey guys, I'm recording a video here just to go over adding 2D art into a 3D scene, just using a material and a plane. This came up a couple times during class, but I didn't have time to go over this. So I'm just making a quick video here. I'm on my home computer, so this is a Mac, but it's going to be pretty much the same on your Windows machine. So this will be good for the AR project, but it might be useful for other things as well. So I'm just going to try to go over it pretty quickly. So I'm going to go to the augmented reality page, and I'm just going to get started by downloading the AR scene template from GitHub. I'm not going to fork this because it's on my own account, so I'm just going to download the zip here, but you should fork this with your own GitHub. Um, so there we go. There's the AR scene template that I downloaded from GitHub, uh, and it opened up in my downloads folder. I'm going to go ahead and move this to my desktop just to keep things simple. Actually, let me just open a regular looking window. Okay, so there's my AR scene template. It says trunk at the end because that's what happens when you download the code. It adds the GitHub branch there. Again, you should clone this on your own GitHub, but however you want to do it is fine. But basically, I just want to add some content into here. What I want to do is just show adding a couple textures um, and putting them into a 3D scene. So if you're adding 2D content into your project, it still needs to have a 3D scene because it needs to know kind of like where to exist in 3D space. So I'm just going to open this up real quick and go to my scenes and go to my export scene. So remember that the cone, the green cone shows you the directionality of the scene. So if you're using a marker, this is going to be pointing directly out of the marker. If you're using a plane, it's going to be pointing directly away out of the plane, like towards the camera. So it's really more like this. It's going to be kind of like pointing at the camera. And then the boxes are there to show you basically the scale. It doesn't work perfectly in every platform, but that's essentially the scale that you want to work inside of. So you don't really want to go outside of these boxes unless you want to make something really big. So I'm going to use this scene. I'm going to add a couple things in here, and then I will put it into an AR scene. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this and just call this export scene. I'll just call this 2D scene. Um, and so I'm going to leave this stuff in here, but I'll delete it before I export it. So now I need some 2D content. I actually didn't really think about that in advance. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to open up Pascal on my computer, and I'm just going to draw um, a really basic thing just to throw in here. Should have thought about this before I started recording. But anyway, let's make a little mountain scene. So I'll do a 512 by 512 sprite here. And I'll just make a couple of different little mountains. So let's choose a color. I'll choose something green and just draw a big mountain range. And let's just fill that in. Okay, so we have one mountain range there. Um, and I'll make a new frame, and let's use the onion skin, and I'll just draw a smaller mountain range over this. Okay, there we go. Let's change the color actually. Let's make it a little bit darker, and I'll fill that in. And there we go. So I'm just going to export these images into my textures folder. Obviously, this part I just did really quickly. For this part, you should use whatever 2D content you have created. I'm assuming it's going to be have some transparency around it if you're putting it into a 3D scene, although it doesn't necessarily need to. But what you're probably going to want is some transparency, so you're going to want to use a PNG. So when I go to export these, I'm going to go to PNG. And actually, for Pascal, I'm just going to export a zip because this is going to give me two files with each frame on it. So I'm just going to click download zip here, and this will go into my downloads folder. So I'll just click save there. and let's go to let's open a new folder over here, go to downloads, here's my new Pascal file, and here are my two images. So really the important thing is here that you want to use some PNGs. And I'm just going to throw these into my textures folder. So let's throw those in there. Again, this can be whatever art you plan to use. I was just making those as a quick example. I probably should have made them before I started the video. Anyway, let's go back over to Godot and let's look at how to add these into our scene. So I'm gonna go up to my main export scene node here and click the plus, and I'm gonna add a new mesh instance. So even though I'm adding a 2D object or a 2D art into the scene, I wanna use a mesh instance. It still needs 3D information for this to work since we are using a 3D scene. So I'm gonna make a new mesh instance. I'll call this my image one. And so for the mesh, I'm just going to use a plane because this is just going to be a 2D surface essentially that we can manipulate in 3D space. So there's my 2D surface. Okay. And I can move this up if I want to, if I want it to be slightly in front of whatever I'm going to be projecting it onto. And of course I can make it larger. So let's just put it like that. And so before we change the size, let's add our image. So I'm going to go to material. I'm going to make a new spatial material here. So I'll click new spatial. And then I can click on that little circle to open the material. And here's where I can add my image. This is under albedo, which is our color. And so we're going to give this the image data. So I'll click on the image texture and click load. Go to textures. Let's add in our first mountain. Click open. And so we're going to have to, there's a couple settings that we're going to want to set on this texture. So it's importing now. But basically, we want to turn transparency on so we can get that transparent effect. Looks like my, shouldn't take this long. I hope Godot isn't crashing. Let's go take a look. Okay, there we go. Okay, so there's my mountain. So let's take a look at that. You can see there's this like black space where the transparency is supposed to be. So to get that transparency, we can go up to flags and turn transparent on. And there we go. That's pretty much all you need to do. I'm not going to deal with the UVs because I'm not going to try to like wrap this around or do anything like that. That's pretty much all I need to do. You can move it around, you can rotate it, you can scale it, do all sorts of stuff. I happen to have a square image, so it looks correct on here. But if you have an image that is landscape or portrait, you do not want to change the material. What you want to do is change the mesh. The mesh determines the size of the plane. So if you had a portrait, you might want to do, something wider, so you could set the X value larger. Or if you had something that's, sorry, the X is for landscape, obviously. Y if you have something that's more portrait oriented. I have a square, so I don't have to worry about that. So there's the first one, and let's add the next one. So we're just going to repeat that process. So I'm going to click on the export scene, add another mesh instance. So I'll just type in mesh, go to mesh instance, click create, call this image 2, and I'm going to add another plane mesh. We can see there's the new plane mesh. I can drag this up here if I want this to be in front. You can kind of organize it however you want to. Of course, you can rotate and scale as well. And we're just going to repeat the same process with the material. So I'll open the material over here and go to new spatial material. Click on that little circle that comes up. Go to my albedo, open my texture, go to load, go into textures. Here's sprite 1. I'm going to open that up. I guess this is going to take a while. And once we do that, of course, we're just going to add in we'll just add in our transparent flag. Um, and so once we do that, we're almost done. Okay, there we go. So let's go to flags, turn transparent on. So now you can see we've got these two planes. You notice one more thing I'll go over before we export. They're only visible from one direction. So depending on how your scene is set up, that may be fine. But if you want it to be able to be visible from both directions, that is something that we can do. I kind of forget where it is, but it's in here somewhere. So let's see, it's not under flags, it's not under albedo. It might be in UV. No, let's see, UV2. No, okay, let's see. Um, is it under flags? We're looking for double-sided. Uh, okay, let's see if we can filter properties and look for side. Okay, look for double. Okay, so let's see. I kind of forget where this is. We may have to Google this. Let's just see. Parameters. Okay, let's just Google this. So let's say Godot material texture plane double-sided. Okay, double-sided. Parameters culling mode. Okay, so parameters, cull mode. Oh, there we go. Okay, so cull mode basically is telling the camera whether or not to show it. And so it looks like that works. So if we tell the cull mode to be disabled, so that means either back front or disabled means it's going to show up on both. So I set that for the front material, this one material, but let's set it for the second one as well. Again, you don't have to do this, but I figured this is something that may come up. So let's go to cull mode, set disabled, and now these will show from both sides. They look darker over here because the lighting is at the top of the scene. So we see kind of a darker side over here. Anyway, that's what we want. That's pretty much what we're going for. So let's delete the rest of our scene. I'm just going to delete all these nodes. So I just selected all the nodes and just right click and hit delete. There we go. So we see this is working now. There appears to be like a little line up here. So I must have added something into the image, like an outline, which is not great, but I'm not going to fix that right now. We could fix that later. So that's coming from the original PNG. So I'd want to just erase that. I could do that in Photoshop or something. Anyway, let's go ahead and export this. So I'm going to click on the main node and go to Project, Tools, Export GLTF. Let's create a new folder called Exports. And let's make sure to change this to GLB so we don't have to deal with all the files. And I'm just going to change the name of this to 2dplanes.glb and click Save. Okay, so now we're ready to put this into an AR scene. So let's go back to the MEA page and let's open up one of our templates. So I'm going to use the marker template just because it's going to be a little bit easier for me to demonstrate this without using my phone. But of course, you could use this with any of the templates. So I'm going to click on marker template. And of course, what you should do is fork this. This is on my own account and I am logged in, so it's not going to let me fork it, but maybe it'll let me duplicate it. Oh, actually I can fork it. So let's fork this and let's say AR template 2D planes. And now all we're going to do is upload this new file, but everything else should work the same. There I am, because the video is open now. So I'm just going to find this on my um, computer. I'm going to go to exports. Here's my 2D planes.glb. I don't need to worry about these materials because it's built into the GLB. I'm just going to upload this here and then go to script.js. And let's just delete these extras that I added and just upload or just change this link to 2dplanes.glb. And the marker value here is 0. And so I'm going to run this, and I think I have the marker here. Let's see, there we go. Okay, so there's my plane. So that border line is kind of weird. I would definitely need to get rid of that, but otherwise this is looking pretty good. And it's kind of nice, you get this kind of like spatial dimension two things. So that is working pretty decently. Of course, with the marker, it's coming out of the marker. Same thing with the NFT if you're using an image. And then with the model viewer, it's going to be on the plane surface. So just keep that in mind. You may want to rotate them. This works for the marker view, but if you're using the Google Model Viewer, you may want to have a different orientation so that things are coming out of, the plane. So if that was the case, you'd probably want these to be rotated up like this, so that they would be coming out of the surface instead. So it kind of depends on what style or which type of AR that you're using. But of course, you can always go back and edit this if you need to. Okay, so that was a quick example, maybe a little less quick than I intended, but hopefully that kind of makes that clear and is useful. Of course, if you have any questions or you want to go over any of this stuff, let me know, and we can do that in class or on Discord.